Welcome back. Ciano here.
I'm the Avatar! You gotta deal with it!
I mean, she's not wrong.
I'm saving you for last. Then you'll get your duel, and I will destroy you.
Yeah, this isn't a kid's show. Last time we discussed how Legend of Korra is often unfairly judged because it's being compared to a kid's show. A great kid's show, but still limited by the format of a kid's show. So what is Korra able to do without those limitations? Well, we get incredible villains like Amon, the Red Lotus, and Kuvira. We see Korra struggling under the weight of the world and her new title. And we get to see the reality of her low points and the triumph of her finding the strength to fight after having her confidence shattered. And if it sounds like this show is just too dark for the Avatar universe, how about an entertaining love triangle that actually has a satisfying ending? But more on that later. Let's take a closer look at the first season, specifically how Korra's journey is not just a satisfying follow-up to Avatar The Last Airbender, but a great story in its own right. There is a lot in the first episode of The Legend of Korra. First, we cover how Aang and his friends attempted to heal the world after the 100-Year War. They created Republic City, a place for refugees who were displaced by the war, and eventually, Aang passed on, and a search was conducted by the Order of the White Lotus to find the next Avatar. They find Korra at the age of 4, and she is immediately placed under their care. She lives in a fortress near the South Pole, and she has masters brought to her so that she's able to train far from any danger. It's already a big departure from Aang's journey to master all 4 elements. It makes sense that Aang instructed the White Lotus to do this. He set up the next Avatar to be the Avatar that he wished he could have been before he was frozen in the ice. And by those measures, he succeeded. Korra is strong. At 17, she has mastered 3 out of the 4 elements, with only air left. Yet, she struggles to connect to the spiritual side of being the Avatar, and we are forced to wonder whether this safe life spent in isolation was really the best thing for her. Korra eventually chooses to travel to Republic City, something that Tenzin and the White Lotus do not approve of. This is her first real decision as the Avatar, and it's a decision that is not examined enough. After all, Korra is our protagonist, and she's responding to the call to adventure. If we do consider everything happening at the time, though, we see that this decision is reckless. So let's consider who Korra is at this point. She's spent her whole life preparing to become the Avatar. She has had daily validation that she is a powerful bender, but she's also lived in isolation for most of her life. When she eventually arrives in the city, we see that not only is she completely ignorant of the growing divide between benders and non-benders, but she has a very loose grasp on basic concepts like money. It's something that Korra is forced to reckon with. This shining city that Aang created might not be as shiny as she thought. It isn't long before she comes across the uglier underbelly of Republic City. Gangsters run rampant, using their bending to extort money out of non-bending citizens. She learns about the harsh reality of living on the street from Bolin and Mako, 2 brothers who were orphaned at a young age and who eventually form half of her Team Avatar. These are issues that Korra hasn't considered before, having been carefully protected since she was a child. The issues facing her and Republic City don't have an easy solution. Unlike in Aang's time when most problems could be solved by a strong bender, Korra finds that she cannot just overpower her enemy. It's been almost 20 years since Aang died, and the city continued on without him as one of its pillars of justice. Shortly after arriving in Republic City, she is arrested by the metal-bending police force and told by Chief Lin Beifong, Toph's daughter, that she isn't needed in the city. Even though Tenzin eventually agrees to allow Korra to stay in the city, it's because of his respect for the word of the Avatar, but we see that he is still very unsure with that decision. Think about the adult figures of authority in Avatar The Last Airbender. Of course, there are adults who maybe aren't the wisest, but the ones who are meant to be the good guys, the wise counsel to the main characters, they rarely waver in what is the right thing to do. Even when they are forced to make difficult decisions, Aang and his friends are able to trust them completely as allies. Korra has Tenzin, who is a steadfast ally, but he also has his moments where he's forced to admit that he isn't sure what to do, as he is in a similar boat as Korra. Although he has trained his children to airbend, this is an entirely different job. Korra shows little aptitude for airbending at first and struggles to learn, and he has to figure out how to teach Korra. That's not even to mention Tarlok, who masquerades as her ally only for it to be revealed that he is weaponizing the police force against non-benders, capitalizing on the divide caused by the Equalists, in order to gain more power in the city. Ozai was scary, but at least he was openly evil. But this is part of the complexity present in Korra's world that wasn't there for Aang. Aang's world was desperate for any form of justice at all. Korra must operate around a police force that is not attempting to maintain peace, but to enforce the will of the ones on top. So yeah, not nearly as comforting a show as Avatar: The Last Airbender. But within these darker plotlines, there are moments that burn brighter because of how grim things are. Let's return to that moment from earlier. Korra is here, at the mercy of her biggest threat because of that decision she made all the way back in the South Pole. She came into the city brimming with confidence, and after a run-in with Amon where she saw him take away a person's bending, she sees how dangerous the world can be. She tries to bury her fear, unwilling to admit even to her closest allies that she is terrified. That fear is then used to manipulate her into joining Tarlok's task force, the start of his plan to use this division in the city to seize more power. Korra winds up here, captured by Amon because she had challenged him to a duel. We see that Korra does this not necessarily because she can win, but because she wants it to end. She is tired of being afraid. But here she learns that the first step to overcoming her fears is to admit them. Of course, Amon lets her go, because killing her now would only make her a martyr. It goes back to Amon being a fantastic villain. He is in control. This isn't a case of a villain caught monologuing. His actions are calculated, and he is always a step ahead. In addition, he works in the morally gray. He kidnaps benders and forcefully takes their bending away, but they're all notorious criminals and gangsters. He interrupts the Pro Bending Championships, and he then validly criticizes the whole event as the title match was fixed by last year's champion. Maybe they don't deserve to have their bending taken away, but Amon's motivations are not reprehensible, or so we think. It's eventually revealed that Amon is actually Noatuk, son of Yakone, a famous gangster who clashed with Avatar Aang. He was nearly able to defeat Aang because of his ability to bloodbend without a full moon. Aang took away Yakone's ability to bend, but he was able to escape prison and flee to the North Pole, where he had Noatuk and forced him to learn to bloodbend. But Yakone had two sons, Noatuk, who was a bloodbending prodigy, and Tarlok, the councilman who attempts to use this rift in society to seize power. Yakone was cruel and abusive to both boys, ridiculing Tarlok for his hesitancy to bloodbend and placing all of his expectations for revenge on Noatuk, constantly pushing him to become stronger. Two boys, raised by a monster, grew up to become monsters themselves. After Korra confronts Tarlok over his abuse of power, he attacks her and is able to subdue her because of his ability to bloodbend. He intends to keep Korra captive so that he can maintain his power. Amon, or Noatuk, launches a violent coup in Republic City, where he begins to cleanse the benders of their impurities. Both of them grew into power-hungry narcissists, but Noatuk is a much bigger threat. His idealized version of equality was warped by Yakone's abuse. It's equality without empathy. He is able to use non-benders' distrust of benders to create himself an army. Tarlok was using the benders' fear of Amon to amass his own power. After he gets captured by Amon, he recognizes him as his brother. And it's only then that he realizes the monster he has become, but far worse, the monster his brother has become. Korra defeats Amon, but he's able to escape. He goes to Air Temple Island, where he's holding his brother prisoner, and he asks if Tarlok will come with him. This isn't the first time he asked him this question. This time he agrees to go, which brings us to this.
The two of us together again. There's nothing we can't do.
Yes, Noatak.
Noatak. I had almost forgotten the sound of my own name.
It will be just like the good old days.
It feels like Tarlok knows that if he had gone with his brother, maybe they could have saved each other. Now things have gone too far. His decision to blow up their boat feels like his final attempt to redeem himself. He couldn't prevent Noatak from becoming this, but at least he could end his cruelty. Let's go back to Korra. In her fight with Amon, she has her bending taken away. She was only able to defeat him because, in a moment of desperation, she found her ability to airbend for the first time. Still, the rest of her bending is gone, and despite the efforts of Katara and her water healing, that bending remains blocked off. Korra rides off into the frozen tundra after telling Mako that she isn't the Avatar anymore. Throughout this whole adventure, Korra's been forced to reconsider what it means to be the Avatar. It's revealed in this moment that she still sees her power as a bender as the only value she has as the Avatar. She eventually finds herself at the edge of an icy cliff, and she is staring down at the drop below. We can see how hopeless she feels, even contemplating ending her own life. But she's stopped by a vision of Aang, who says that she was the one who called him to her. When she asks why, he responds,
"When we hit our lowest point, we are open to the greatest change."
It's moments like this that you can't really approach in a kid's show, but it would be ridiculous to think less of Avatar: The Last Airbender simply because it doesn't conform to a show for young adults. And I think we should celebrate a show that drops lines like that. Don't worry, I didn't forget about the love triangle. It'll be coming up in the next episode. In the meantime, I'd love to hear what you guys think of Legend of Korra, and let me know if you want more episodes set in the Avatar universe. If you made it this far, consider subscribing. If you want to get a sneak peek at what shows we'll be discussing next, click the link to my Substack in the description and subscribe there. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.